Hello guys, today we'll be seeing a quick miniature of Magnus Carlsen against Jean Geoffrey in the 10th game of the Clutch Chess Showdown organized on Lee Chess. The game lasted 25 moves, but 25 moves in the top level chess can be considered a miniature. Uh, it is also very interesting to see how Magnus Carlsen simply crushed his opponent with a straightforward kingside attack. So let's start the game. Magnus started with d4, knight f6, knight c3, d5, bishop f4. So this is known as the Veroso attack. One of the best players to learn from the white side is Bahadur Jobava, the Georgian grandmaster who employed Veroso attack in many games, and he won some really nice games against some of the top players of the world. Bishop f4, black responded with e6, a very solid way to continue, e3 and bishop b4. So black pins the c3 knight. Basically, black would like to go c5 in this position, and it is also one of the main moves. But then after c5, white goes knight b5, threatening knight c7 check, black plays knight a6, and then later on white simply plays c3, and this knight on a6 is kind of misplaced. So knight b5 in this position, knight b5 is always one of the main ideas for white. So black's one way of course is to play a6 and simply stop the idea of knight b5. Another way which black played in this game is bishop b4, pinning the knight and at the same time preparing to castle. White responds with knight g e2. So white doesn't really want to get his pawns doubled after bishop into c3 bc3. At the same time he develops his own piece, castle, a3, kicking the bishop away from its active position, bishop e7, and here Magnus played a really surprising move and quite a rare move. He, as I told earlier, the expert of this system, the Veroso attack from the white side, is Bahadur Jobava, and his choice was to play knight c1 here. A very logical move. Of course, we want our bishop to develop to an active square on maybe d3 or even on e2, and for that we need to move our knight somewhere. Knight c1 looks quite logical because the knight can go to b3 where it will have some hold on the c5 square. So a game between two computers continued with c5, d into c5, bishop into c5, knight c3 and bishop e7, and then white played bishop d3, which was a fine position for white. So this looks quite logical for white to continue, but here Magnus surprised even his opponent, I guess. He played knight g1. Basically, just a few moves back, white developed his knight to e2, and now he returns back to g1. This kind of contradicts the opening principle that you need to we should not move a piece in the opening twice because it wastes our time, and we need to focus on development, completing our development as soon as possible in the opening. But Magnus contradicts this principle. I guess he wanted to get a new game, something which even his opponent is not prepared for. So he wanted to take his opponent to a completely new territory. So Magnus goes knight g1, but of course it has some logic behind it. White of course wants to develop his bishop to d3 on an active square, and this knight can later go to f3, a very natural square for the knight, having control on the central squares e5 and d4. So after knight g1, black goes c5. This is the main move for black in this position. Black has to play c5 and try to gain some play on the queen side. White goes knight f3, knight h5. Another quite logical move. Black tries to win this important f4 bishop, which is exerting pressure along this diagonal. White simply takes d into c5, knight into f4, e into f4, bishop into c5, and now white plays knight to d3, bishop to d3. The bishop is well placed here, but black has won the bishop pair. White's pawn structure on the king side is not so great, double pawns on the king side. But one thing we can say that which is in fact quite surprising is that even though white has wasted a lot of moves in the opening, for example he played knight e2 and the knight back to g1, even after this we can see if we count the number of pieces, The white has a knight, a bishop on d3 and a knight on c3, as opposed to black's bishop on c5. So white has 3 pieces developed after the opening, while black has only 1. So this is somewhat surprising. So in return of the bishop pair and a weak pawn structure, white has got some development advantage. Black continues with g6, and I think this is the seed of all the problems, all the complications that black faces on the king side. And in fact, there was no need of g6, as right now there is no pressure on the h7 pawn. Black would have simply continued with queen f6, a nice queen move, putting pressure on the f4 pawn, and later on he can think of playing knight c6, a6, followed by expanding on the queen side with b5. And it's a normal position. I guess it's a playable position for both the sides. Both sides have pluses and minuses, and yeah, it's a completely playable position, and we would have seen a longer fight than what happened in the game. Black played g6, which is of course not needed, and this gave Magnus a chance to start an offense on the king side straight away with f4, a nice aggressive move. As soon as black played g6, white got a chance to open up the king side with h4, h5, and once the h file is opened, as we can see that the rook is already placed on the h file, which can come very handy in order to attack the black king. Black develops the knight on c6, white plays h5 as planned, queen f6, bringing the queen to an active square, attacking the f4 pawn, and this queen can also come in defense of the black king if necessary. White plays queen d2, defending the pawn and also preparing to castle whenever required, and immediately this queen side rook will can come to the king side in order to strengthen white's attack. g3 was also another possibility for white, simply defending the pawn and creating a square for the white king on g2, when again white's idea is quite simple, to attack on the king side. So queen d2 was played, and here I guess Jean Geoffrey made the critical mistake of the game. He simply played a move which gave white winning advantage instantly. e5 is the move that Jean Geoffrey played, and it is according to the principles of chess that we in fact read in a lot of books when we start out, that an attack on the wing should be met by counter attack in the center. So white is attacking on the king side with h4, h5, and his intentions are quite aggressive on the king side. So black decides to counter attack immediately, since the white king is still in the center. So counter attacking in the center makes sense according to the principles, but in fact that principle doesn't apply here, as white is extremely well prepared for a counter attack in the center. So with e5, black sacrifices the d5 pawn. As you can see clearly, black sacrifices the d5 pawn in order to gain some sort of a counter attack, but it is not possible in this position, as Magnus simply grabs the pawn on d5, queen d6. So black is hoping that this knight will move and black will grab the f4 pawn. White simply stabilizes his knight on d5, supports his knight on d5, which is really aggressive and well placed. This knight can maybe try to come on the weak square on g5 later on, which can be really detrimental for black. So bishop c4, white simply stabilizes his knight on d5, black plays b5, trying to create more and more counterplay on the queen side, pushing the bishop back from c4. White simply drops it back to a2, and black takes the f4 pawn with ef4. And here comes the main idea behind queen d2, that white can simply safeguard his king on the queen side with long castle. With long castle, not the white of course safeguards his king, but at the same time brings his rook into the play. And now you can see that all white spaces are in play, the queen, the rook, and all the minor pieces, and he has an ongoing attack on the king side, which simply states that white has a winning position. Black's queen side is yet to be developed, and he has a lot of weak squares, a lot of weak dark squares on the king side. And his bishop, which should be placed on g7, this bishop should be placed on g7, but it is placed completely misplaced on c5, and this is the reason why black can rule the dark squares on the king side, use them to create a very strong attack. So after long castles, black continues his strategy to create a counter attack on the king side, on the queen side near the white king. White opens up the h file with hg6 and brings another piece into the scene with knight g5. Now white is simply threatening to play knight e4, attacking, forking the queen and the bishop when it is really impossible to defend a piece for him. So black goes with bishop f5, and now white plays a nice move, a nice aggressive move. He goes with the knight to h7. The idea behind it is of course to attack this rook, but one more idea is to play knight f6 check. These knights on d5 and f6 create a barrier for the black king. Let's imagine, for example, okay, here black played rook f8, which is quite logical, and after knight f6 check, we can see that these two knights completely dominate the black king. Even though black would play king f8, he cannot run to e7 nor can he run to e8, and these two knights create some sort of a cage for the black king from which the black king cannot escape, and the rest of the job will be cleared by the white rooks on the h file. So after knight f6 check, black goes king f8, tries to run, but of course there is no way to run. White plays rook h8 check, king g7, rook h7 check, king f8, and now another rook joins the party with rook h1, and white is simply threatening mate in 2 with rook h8 check, rook h7 mate, and basically there is simply no defense against this onslaught. This simple idea of white mate in 2 idea. So black here resigned. So I think I hope you learned a lot from this quick miniature, quick attacking chess from Magnus Carlsen. A nice game, I would say. Black just made one small mistake here with e5, and after that it was a smooth sailing for white, a smooth attack, a smooth offense on the king side. See you in the next game, guys. Take care. Bye bye.